If you've bought or rented a house in the past few years, or even if you're planning to in the future, our first story tonight is a must-watch. You see, your dream home could be a toxic dump, a hazard to you and your family's health. And while the previous owner or landlord may be aware of it, there's no compulsion to tell you, to warn you. Like Robin Vickers, you could become a hidden victim of the meth scourge, unwittingly moving into a home which later tests positive for P. As Hannah Ockleford discovered, if the police weren't involved, you could be in big trouble.
This house was supposed to mean a fresh start for newly separated Robin Vickers.
I started immediately not feeling well once we were here. I started getting sore eyes, they burnt something terrible, I had a runny nose.
But it quickly turned into another headache.
I couldn't sleep at all, I had total insomnia and the children were affected with that and with a metallic flavour in their mouths.
Having seen images like this, Robin was suspicious methamphetamine had not just been used, but manufactured here.
Was there any particular telltale signs at that point that indicated that there'd been any drug use in the house?
The missing light bulbs were a really severe sign, as I found out after I started looking into it.
It's well known, light bulbs are used in the absence of a glass pipe.
The drains were all blocked and the septic tank kept failing because the bacteria in the tank kept dying. The plumber felt that it was probably to do with chemicals that had been put down there that had actually blocked the drains.
Where did you go in order to get help?
I talked to so many departments I can't remember them all because everyone I rang suggested I try somebody else.
Robin Vickers tried to get help from her local council, the Department of Labour, local MPs and Public Health.
Every time the letting agent came, I said to her that I felt that the house was toxic and it needed cleaning, and she would not be drawn on it.
There's probably a clandestine drugs lab in every suburb, and in some suburbs there are probably dozens.
Nick Powell runs a business testing houses like these.
How many calls do you get from concerned members of the public over this issue?
A couple so far today.
And are you getting busier?
It's getting busier and busier as time goes on, yes.
Robin used the Tenancy Tribunal to force her landlord to test this property.
The testing revealed that it was likely that meth had been smoked in both the main bathroom and the laundry.
Those two rooms were decontaminated, but Robin was still concerned. She once again went to Public Health. The email she received back said, "The level of assistance you're requiring goes beyond what we can provide."
I actually got very angry and said, well, you know, I've had to research how to get this house tested and then research why the testing seems not to be thorough. Do you now expect me to research the effects on my health and how to treat myself?
We certainly meet a lot of concerned people, concerned for their own health and in particular the health of their children. And that's on a personal level completely understandable and on a scientific level completely justifiable.
No one's speaking for us. It's kind of like the innocent victims of clandestine meth labs are the ones who aren't getting any help whatsoever.
According to our expert, it's difficult to know if meth's been manufactured in a house just by looking at it, unless there's obvious corrosion on surfaces.
It's quite possible for there to be no signs of this type, but nonetheless for there to be significant levels of contamination.
If a house is tested and decontaminated privately, there's no onus on a landowner to let the local council know, which means that you could buy a house that's tested positive for meth manufacture or use, and there'll be no record of it on the LIM report.
This house is unusual in that it has been red flagged, and it is on the LIM report that it has been used for meth.
Caveat emptor, buyer beware.
Well, a lot of people need to beware. Now, like Robin, we spend a lot of time trying to find someone to tell us who's taking responsibility for this issue. As you heard, there could be thousands of houses affected by this problem. So we went to the Ministry of Health, which put out a 176-page guide last month. But apparently there's only one person who can speak to the media on this. That person is overseas. So joining me now, anti-P campaigner Mike Sabin and local government president Lawrence Yule. Mike Sabin, are you surprised that it's hard to get people to talk about this?
No, it's not. I mean, for the last 12 years, this thing has been such a hot potato and there's been a complete lack of ownership of the problem and leadership, really, in terms of setting in place some meaningful protocols, some guides for all councils, all cleaners, owners of properties, tenancy managers and so forth to actually follow. And the Ministry of Health guideline that you talk about is simply that. It's telling us what we already know in a much more, in a much longer way, basically.
Lawrence Yule, are councils aware of this as a problem?
Not up until this point. I wasn't aware until today of the significance of the problem. If the police do tell councils that something's been used as a P-lab, then it is generally put on the LIM report. But some people don't even get LIM reports when they buy properties. So it's a complex issue to resolve, but I do accept, on based on what I've heard today, that it's probably far more substantial than what we might have thought. Mike
Sabin, just in terms of those numbers, I mean, is this being overblown, or are we seriously talking?
No, look, absolutely not, Mark. There's been over 1,500 labs that have been dismantled by police since 1997. Now, is that 1%, 5%, 10% or what's that? I mean, you start doing the maths on this, you can make methamphetamine in a plastic drink bottle, if you know what you're doing, and for every kilo of meth, you're going to get 7 kilos of toxic waste, which is going to go down the drains, in the backyard, in the walls, the ceilings and so forth.
So there's no doubt the labs are moving around, a lot of properties are being involved.
Oh, absolutely no doubt at all. I mean, I get calls all the time from people that are thinking, I think I've moved into a meth lab, and while it does go into the LIM report for those where it's fortunate enough that they've been caught in the system, it's then removed once it's supposedly cleaned.
Lawrence, so if the police are involved, there's a set protocol, you step in, various things take place. If the police aren't involved, if someone, one of your ratepayers or someone living in a particular area rings up a council, do they know what to do?
I don't think they do, and I think that's the weakness here. I think the fact is that if the police are involved, there's a whole process that is undertaken. But a lot of people don't want the police to be involved. They don't even want to tell the police. They just want to on-sell the property and hand the problem over to somebody else. Basically, and that's, I think, the problem, that this is falling between the cracks. And if the numbers are as been suggested, then we need to find a collaborative approach to fix it. Now, there are two ways of doing that. One is to tell people when they buy properties, not only do they need to get a LIM report, but they need to go and get somebody to assess the property as to whether it's been done as a P-lab or not, and that could be by a private consultant. The other is to work with the government and the other agencies to see as whether there is a more governmental type solution to resolve this nationwide. And I don't know what answer is correct at this point.
Because you see, like Robin Vickers in our story tonight, I mean, she seemed to have a problem trying to get a straight answer from anyone. In the public health document, it actually says there, we've got to get this together because there's going to be a perception of buck passing, and that's exactly what appears to have happened.
Well, I think that's correct. I think it's quite clear that there are a number of agencies involved, and quite simply how it works now, if the police aren't involved, nobody takes responsibility. And I think that's a discussion that councils through Local Government New Zealand and others need to have with the government to see what system is going to be brought in place to try and fix this.
But Mike Sabin, it's almost like a second-tier problem. I mean, people are aware of the problem of P. They see the arrests, they see the police raids. But this is now sort of leaching out into affecting people who had no idea they were caught up in this.
It's an environmental ticking time bomb, notwithstanding the implications to those who are living in the environments where meth has been manufactured. Non-biodegradable, carcinogenic neurotoxins. Now, I mean, that's something that it does need a collaborative approach, but the point is it's not like this is a new problem. We haven't just sprung upon this. Setting out some meaningful guidelines so that anyone from the police right through to councils and cleaners, protocols more than guidelines, actually know what they must be doing is vital.
Look, we're hearing quite positive things, coming from Lawrence Yule in terms of local government. Is it their problem, or does the lead have to come from national government?
Well, I mean, I think the lead has to come from government in terms of the infrastructure and setting the protocol that local government can then work with. And then, in fact, everyone can work with, because what constitutes clean? We don't even really know what that is. Because studies have shown that meth will penetrate right through wall linings into stud timber, into ceiling spaces. It's not just a case of testing the air.
Lawrence Yule, you've then got the problem, I suppose, it's going to have to be worked out, is who picks up the tab.
Correct, but I think the first thing we need to identify, and I'm hearing that this is not a new problem, but it's certainly new to me and to us today of this significance. But if there is a problem, we need to talk to the government and we need to understand how it might be resolved, including where it fits on all the priorities of things that need to be addressed. And then once we've worked out a system, then we need to work out who's going to pay. Obviously, all common sense would tell you that the person that did the damage should pay, but the inspections and those types of things probably will end up on the individual who's seeking an assurance about the property they're wishing to purchase.
Mike Sabin, how much of a priority should this be?
Well, a lot more of a priority than I believe it's made. We shouldn't have taken 12 years to get to a point where we think the problem needs addressing to this extent. It defies logic that people don't know that the problem is what it is, in my view.
Mike Sabin, thanks very much. Lawrence Shaw, thank you for your time tonight. We look forward to hearing how you get on with any talks with central government on this.